The 36 Lessons of Vivec, Sermon 26. Then Vivec left his architectural rapture and went back to the space that was not a space. From the provisional house he looked into the middle world to find the fourth monster, called the Pocket Cabal. The monster had hid itself in the spell lists of the great chimeri wizards of the extreme east, where the Emperor Parasols grow wild. Vivec disguised himself as a simple traveler, but radiated a tenuous sense fabric so that the wizards would seek him out. Of Muatra, he made a simple walking dwarf. Before long, the Invisible One was among the libraries of the East, feeding the essential words of the Pocket Cabal to his walking dwarf, and then running when the magic would fail. After a year or two of this thievery, Muatra was sick to its stomach, and the walking dwarf exploded near the slave pens of a wizard's tower. The Pocket Cabal then slipped itself into the mouths of the slaves and hid again. Vivec then watched as the slaves erupted into babble and breaking magic. They rattled their cages and sung out half hymns that formed into forbidden and arcane knowledge. Litany fiends appeared and drank from the excess. Grabbers from the adjacent place came into the world sideways, the slave talking having disrupted the normal non-cardinal points. So of course a giant bug appeared, with the great Eastern wizard inside it. He could see past Vivec's disguise and knew of the warrior poet's divinity, but he thought himself so powerful that he talked harshly. "See what you have wrought, silly Triune. Columns of nonsense and litany fiends. I cannot believe how reason or temperance can be made whole again due to your eating. Consort with more demons, why don't you?" Vivec stabbed the wizard through his soul. The giant bug harness fell on the slave cages, and the slaves ran about free and reckless. Too reckless, more with pregnant words. Colors bent into the earth. Vivec created a dome-head demon to contain it all. The Pocket Cabal is therefore interred here forever. Let this be a cursed land where sorcery is broken and maligned. Then he picked up Muatra by the beard and left the ghostly hemisphere of the dome-head demon. On its boundaries, Vivec placed a warning and a song of entrance that contained errors in it, with mock bones and a half-dead Muatra. He created the tentpoles of a fortress theory, and fatal languages were imprisoned for all time. Set appeared and looked on what his brother-sister had created. The Clockwork King said, "Of the 8 monsters, this is the most confusing. May I treasure it?" Vivec gave Set leave to do so, but told him to never release the Pocket Cabal into the middle world. He said, "I have hidden secrets in my travels here, and made a likeness of Muatra to ward against the unwise. Under this dome, the temporal myth is no longer man. The ending of the words is Alm Sivi." Sermon 27. The scripture of the word first. All language is based on meat. Do not let the sophists fool you. Second, the third walking path explores hysteria without fear. The efforts of madmen are a society of itself, but only if they are written. The wise may substitute one law for another, even into incoherence, and still say he is working within a method. This is true of speech and extends to all scripture. Third, do not go to the realm of apology for absolution. Beyond articulation, there is no fault. The adjacent place, where the grabbers live, is the illusion of the vocal or the middle realms of thought, by which I mean the constructed. This is how I stole the certainty of the Chancellor of Exactitude, perfect to look upon from every angle. When you come out of the vocal, you can never be certain. Fourth, the truest body of work is made up of silence, as in the silence that results from no reference. By the word, I mean the dead. Fifth, the first meaning is always hidden. Sixth, The realm of apology is perfection and impossible to attack. Thus the wise avoid it. Trinity is unity is the world and word of action. The third walking path. 7th, the sage who suppresses his best aphorism, cut off his hands, for he is a thief. 8th, the clothes of the broken map are worn only by fools and heretics. The map is an exit for laziness. It is the dusty tongue, which is to say the given chart that most take as a story that is complete. No word is true until it is eaten. The ending of the words is Alm Civi. Sermon 28. Then Vivec left Set to look after the dome head demon, and went back to the space that was not a space. From the provisional house, he looked into the middle world to find the 5th monster, called the Ruddy Man. When the dregs ruled the world, the Daedroth Prince Molag Bal had been the chief. He took a different shape then, spiny and armored and made for the sea. Vivec, in giving birth to the many spawn of his marriage, dropped an old image of Molag Bal into the world, a dead carapace of memory. It would not have been a monster if a Velothi child had not wanted to impress his village by wearing it. The Ruddy Man of the 8 monsters was the least complicated. He made those who wore him into mighty killers and nothing more. He existed in the physical. Only geography makes him special. When Vivec found him near the boys' village, Anon Nesis, there was a violent clash of arms and an upheaval of the earth. Their battle created the West Gash. Wanderers that still go there hear still the sounds of it. Swords across the crust, the grunt of God, the snapping of his monster child's splintered legs. After his victory, Vivec took the shell of the Ruddy Man to the dregs that had modified his mother. The Queen of Dregs, whose name is not easy to spell, was in a period of self-incubation. Her wardens took the gift from Vivec and promised to guard it from the server's world. This is the first account of dregs being liars. In 10 years, the Ruddy Man appeared again, this time near Tyr, worn by a wayward shaman who followed the House of Troubles. Instead of guarding it, the dregs had imbued the living armor with mythic inflexibility. It molted soon after skill draping the shaman and stretched his bones to the 5 corners. When Vivec met the monster in battle again, he saw the remains of 3 villages dripping from its feet. He took on his giant form and slew the Ruddy Man by way of the symbolic collage. Since he no longer trusted the Ultmer of the sea, Vivec gave the carapace to the monster to the devout and loyal mystics of the Number Room. He told them, "You make of the Ruddy Man a philosopher's armor." The mystics began by wrapping one of their sages in the shells, a series of flourishes by 2 supernumerates, one hormonally tall and the other just under his arms. They ran around the carapace and through each other, applying holy resin drawn from the carcasses of the now useless numbers between 12 and 13. Golden straws were quickly stuck through the mythic epidermal so the sage could breathe. After the ceremonial etchings were drawn into the hardening resin, long lists of dead names and equations whose solutions were to be found in the mouth of the chimer inside. There came the illuminations inscribed by the bright, terrible fingernail of Vivec. From the nail's tip flowed a searing liquid, filling the grooves of the ceremonial etchings. They bled out to form veined patterns about the sage shell that theologians would decipher forever after. The ending of the words is Alm Civi. Sermon 29. The Scripture of the Numbers. 1. The Dragon Break or the Tower. 1. 2. The Enantiomorph. 68. 3. The Invisible Gate, Alm Civi. 112. 4. The Corners of House of Troubles. 242. 5. The Corners of the World, 100. 6. The Walking Ways, 266. 7. The Sword at the Center, 39. 8. The Wheel or the Eight Givers, 484. 9. The Missing, 11. 10. The Tribes of the Ultima, 140. 11. The Number of the Master, 102. 12. The Heavens, 379. 13. The Serpent, 36. 14. The King's Cough, 32. 15. The Redeeming Force, 110. 16. The Acceptable Blasphemes, 12. 17. The Hurling Disc, 283. 18. The Egg, or 6 times the Wise. 19. The Provisional House, 258. 20. The Lunar Lattice, 425. 21. The Womb, 13. 22. Unknown, 453. 23. The Hollow Prophet, 54. 24. The Star Wound, 44. 25. The Emperor, 239. 26. The Rogue Plane, 81. 27. The Secret Fire, 120. 28. The Drowned Lamp, 8. 29. The Captive Sage, 217. 30. The Scarab, 10. 31. The Listening Frame, 473. 32. The False Call, 7. 33. The Anticipations, 234. 34. The Lawless Grammar, 2. 35. The Prison Shirt, 191. 36. The Hours, 364. The Presence of Death Witness. This is what the numbers are. They hang on to the Alpes as the last nostalgia of their godhood. The effigies of numbers are their current applications. This is folly, as above. To be affixed to a symbol is too certain. The ending of the words is Alm Civi. Sermon 30. Then Vivec left the mystics of the number room and went back to the space that was not a space. From the provisional house he looked into the middle world to find the sixth monster, called City Face. He was vexed when he could not find it and went back to the morning hold in secret anger, killing a mystic that asked about higher order. Nerevar the Hortator witnessed this and said, "Why do this, my lord? The mystics look to you for guidance. They work to make your temple better stoned." Vivec said, "No one knows what I am." The Hortator nodded and went back to his studies. Here is how Cityface hid from his father. It had been born, named as Hanot, a bare urge of power, an esoteric wind nerve tuned to the frequency of huddled masses. It found root in villages and multiplied, finding in the minds of the settled a veiled astrology, the star charts of culture, and this resonance made its head swim. Her note moved sideways into the adjacent place. growing and unbeknownst. Above the vocal, it trembled with new emotions, immortal ones, absorbing more than the 30 known to exist in the middle world. When her note became gravely homesick, the grabbers took it. A grabber said, "New emotions to the lonely occur only of madness. This finger's gone, it is ours now." Grabbers had never made a city of their own, and their glimpse of Vivec's, which shone with holiness through all the spheres, had taken their attention. Under this reason did the issue of Vec slide into our realm, drawn by our coveting, hidden in loss. We shall build our tower hope upon its face. Now many years had passed in Resdania, and the high priests of the Dwemer were building something alike as Vivec and alike as the new Hanot of the Grabbers. The Hortator was engaged with an army of theirs that had become too brave, talking foolish words, and Nerevar helped destroy them with the help of the Orphan Legion of Iron. When he went to give trophy to Vivec, he saw his lord under attack by the city face. The monster was saying this: "Here we are to replace your city, Vec and Vec. We are from the place of the more than known emotions, and our citizenry has died from it. 2 things we came for, but can stay for only one. Either we ask you to correct our error of culture, or merely take yours by dint of force. The second is easiest, we think." Vivec sighed. "You would replace my direction," he said. "I weary of this, though I wanted to kill you an age before. Resdania is fallen ill, and I have no time for one more imaginary analogy of an unknown incident. Here, take this," at which he touched the tower hope of the city face and corrected the error of the Grabbers. "And this," at which he stabbed the heart of the city face with the Evos knife, which is to say Arquette, AI, I Altadun AI, the short blade of proper commerce. The ending of the words is Alm Civi. Sermon 31. Many more years passed in Resdania, and the high priests of the Dwemer were almost ready to make war on the rulers of Veleth. The Hortator had become the husband of Iam during this time, and the first saint of the Triune Way. Vivec had tired of fighting his sons and daughters, and so took a respite from trying to find them. The Hortator said to his wife, "Where is Vivec, my teacher? I love him still, though he grows cold. His lamentations, if I may call them that, have changed the skin of the whole country. He is hardly to be found anywhere in Veleth of late. The people grow dark because of it." And Iam took mercy on her troubled husband, and told him that the sword of the Triune had been fighting minor monsters stirred up by the Dwemer as they worked on their brass siege machines. She took the Hortator inside her and showed him where his master was. Alm Civi, or at least that aspect that chose to be Vivec, sat in the litany hall of the false thinking temple. After his battle with the flute and pipe ogres of the West Gash, he began writing again in his Book of Hours. He had put on his water face first. That way he could separate the bronze of the old temple from the blue of the new and write with happiness. Second, he had to take another feather from the big moon, further rendering it dead. That way he could write about mortals with truth. Third, he recalled the pomegranate banquet, where he was forced to marry Molak Baal, with wet scriptures to cement his likeness as Mafala, and write with black hands. He wrote, "The last time I heard his voice, showing the slightest sign of impatience, I learned to control myself and submit to the will of others. Afterwards, I dared to take on the sacred fire and realized there was no equilibrium with the et other. There were liars, lost roots, and the most I can do is to be an interpreter into the rational. Even that fails the needs of the people. I sit on the mercy seat and pass judgment, the waking state, and the phase aspect of the innate urge. Only here can I doubt in this book, written in water, broadened to include evil. Then Vivec threw his ink on the passage to cover it up for the lay reader, and wrote instead, "Find me in the blackened paper, unarmored in final scenery. Truth is like my husband, instructed to smash, filled with procedure and noise, hammering weighty heaviness made schematic, lessons learned only by a mace. Let those that hear me then be buffeted, and let some die in the ash from the striking. Let those that find him murdered by illumination, pummeled like a traitorous house, because if an hour is golden, then immortal I am a secret code. I am the partaker of the doom drum, chosen of all those that dwell in the middle world to wear this crown, which reverberates with truth, and I am the mangling messiah. The ending of the words is Alm Civi." Sermon 32. The Scripture of the Maze, first. The pleasure of annihilation is the pleasure of disappearing into the unreal. All those that would challenge the sleeping world will seek membership in this movement. I denounce the alienation of the cloven duality with a hammer. Second, take from me the lessons as a punishment for being mortal. To be made of dirt is to be treated as such by your jailers. This is the key and the lock of the Daedra. Why do you think they escaped the compromise? Third, for Lofi, your skin has become the pregnant darkness. My brooding has brought this on. Remember that Boethia asked you to become the color of brooms. How else to show yourselves, people of the Exodus, into this vital pain? Fourth, the sage who is not an anvil, a conventional sentence and nothing more, by which I mean dead, the fourth walking way. Fifth, a proper comprehension of the virtues, stage managed, and to be murdered. Sixth, in the end, rejoice as a hostage released from drumming torment, but that savors his wound. The drum breaks, and you find it to be a nest of hornets, which is to say, your sleep is over. Seventh, the suspicious is spectacle, and the lie is only a theoretical inspiration. Eighth, but then why, you ask, do the Daedra wish to meddle with the Albus? It is because they are the radical critique, essential as all martyrs, that some are more evil than others is not an illusion, or rather it is a necessary illusion. The ending of the words is Alm Civi. Sermon 33. Then Vivec left the litany hall of the false thinking temple, where he had brooded for so long creating the scripture of the pounding light, and went back to the space that was not a space. From the provisional house, he looked into the middle world to find the seventh monster, called Lie Rock. Lie Rock was born of Vivec's second aperture, and was thrown out of the pomegranate banquet by a member of the Sweeps, another forgotten guild. The Sweep did not take it for the monster that it was, and so he did not expect it to fly from his hand and into the heavens. I am born of golden wisdom and powers that should have forever been unalike. With this nature, I am invited into the hidden heaven, by which he meant the scaled blanket, made of not stars, whose number is 13. Lie Rock became full of foolishness, haggling with the Void Ghost, who hides in the religions of all men. The Void Ghost said, "Stay with me a full 100 years, years, and I will give you a power that no divinity will dare disobey. But before the 100 years was up, Vivec was already looking for Lyrock and found him. Stupid stone, Vivec said. To hide in the scaled blanket is to make a mark on nothing. His bargains are only for ruling kings. So Vivec sent the Hortator to the heavens to shave Lyrock asunder by the named axe. Nerevar made peace with the South Pole Star of Thieving and the North Pole Star of Warriors, and the Third Pole Star, which existed only in the ether, which was governed by the apprentice of Magnus, the Sun. They gave him leave to wander among their charges, and gave him red sight by which to find Lyrock in the hidden heaven. By chance, Nerevar met the Void Ghost first, who told him that he was in the wrong place, to which the Hortator said, "Me or you," and the Void Ghost said both. This sermon does not tell what else was said between these masters. Lyrock, however, used the confusion to launch his own attack on the city god Vivec. He was hastened by all 3 of the Black Guardians, who wanted him swiftly gone, though they meant no hostility to the Lord of the Middle Air. The citizenry of Vivec screamed as they saw a shooting star come down out of the sky hole like a toll road of hell. But Vivec merely raised his hand and froze Lyrock just above the city, and then he pierced the monster with Muatra. The practice of piercing the second aperture is now forbidden. When Nerevar returned, he saw the frozen comet above his lord's city. He asked whether or not Vivec wanted it removed. I would have done so myself if I wanted, silly Hortator. I shall keep it there with its last intention intact, so that if the love of the people of this city for me ever disappear, so shall the power that holds back their destruction. Nerevar said, "Love is under your will only." Vivec smiled and told the Hortator that he had become a minister of truth. The ending of the words is Alm Civi. Sermon 34. Then Vivec left the ministry of truth and went back to the space that was not a space. From the provisional house, he looked into the middle world to find the 8th and final and mightiest monster, called Golga Morgil and more. The wise must look elsewhere for this string of power. Vivec called to his side the Hortator, and this was the first time that Nerevar had ever been to the provisional house. He had the same vision that Vivec had so many years ago, that of the 2-headed ruling king. Who is that? He wondered. Vivec said, "The red jewel of conquest." Nerevar, perhaps because he was frightened, became vexed at his lord's answer. "Why are you always so evasive?" Vivec told the Hortator that to be otherwise was to betray his nature. Together they moved into the middle world, to a village near where Vivec had been found by Iam and Set. The 8th monster was there, but he did not act much like a monster. He sat with his legs in the ocean, and with a troubled look on his face. When he saw his father, he asked why he should have to die and return to oblivion. Vivec told the 8th monster that to be otherwise was to betray his nature. Since this did not seem to satisfy the monster, and Vivec still had a touch of Iam's mercy, he said, "The fire is mine, let it consume thee, and make a secret door at the altar of Padhome in the house of Boethia, where we become safe and looked after." The monster accepted Muatra with a peaceful look, and his bones became the foundation for the city of the dead. Anon, Narcissus, Nerevar put away his axe, which he had at the ready, and frowned. "Why," he said, "did you ask me to come if you know the 8th monster would give in so easily?" Vivec looked at the Hortator for a long time. Nerevar understood. Do not betray your nature. Answer as you will. Vivec said, I brought you here because I knew the mightiest of my issue would succumb to Muatra without argument, if only I gave him consolation first. Nerevar looked at Vivec for a long time. Vivec understood. Say the words, Hortator. Nerevar said, Now I am the mightiest of your children. Let this sermon be consolation to those who read it that are destined to die. The ending of the words is Alm Civi. Sermon 35. The Scripture of Love. The formulas of proper Velothi magic continue in ancient tradition, but that virility is dead, by which I mean at least replaced. Truth owes its medicinal nature to the establishment of the myth of justice. Its curative properties it likewise owes to the concept of sacrifice. Princes, chiefs, and angels all subscribe to the same notion. This is a view primarily based on a prolific abolition of an implied profanity, seen in ceremonies, knife fighting, hunting, and the exploration of the poetic, on the ritual of occasions, which comes to us from the days of the cave glow. I can say nothing more than to loosen your equation of moods to lunar currency. Later, and by that I mean much, much later, my reign will be seen as an act of the highest love, which is a return from the astral destiny and the marriages between. By that I mean the catastrophes, which will come from all 5 corners. Subsequent are the revisions differentiated between hope and the distraught, situations that are only required by the periodic death of the immutable. Cosmic time is repeated. I wrote of this in an earlier life, an imitation of submersion in love's premonition, its folly into the underworld, by which I mean the day you will read about outside of yourself in an age of gold. For on that day, which is a shadow of the sacrificial concept, all history is obliged to see me for what you are, in love with evil. To keep one's powers intact at such a stage is to allow for the existence of what can only be called a continual spirit. Make of your love a defense against the horizon. Pure existence is only granted to the holy, which comes in a myriad of forms, half of them frightening and the other half divided into equal parts, purposeless and assured. Late is the lover that comes to this by any other walking way than the 5th, which is the number of the limit of this world. The lover is the highest country and a series of beliefs. He is the sacred city bereft of a double. The uncultivated land of monsters is the rule. This is clearly attested by Anu and his double, which love knows never really happened. Similarly, all the other symbols of absolute reality are ancient ideas, ready for their graves, or at least the essence of such. The scripture is directly ordered by the codes of Mephala, the origin of sex and murder, defeated only by those who take up those ideas without my intervention. The religious elite is not a tendency or a correlation. They are dogma complemented by the influence of the untrustworthy sea and the governance of the stars, dominated at the center by the sword, which is nothing without a victim to cleave unto. This is the love of God, and he would show you more predatory, but at the same time instrumental to the will of critical harvest, a scenario by which one becomes as he is, of male and female. The magic hermaphrodite mark the norms of violence, and it barely registers, suspended as it is by treaties written between the original spirits. This should be seen as an opportunity, and in no way tedious, though some will give up, for it is easier to kiss the lover than become one. The lower regions crawl with these souls, caves of shallow treasures, meeting in places to testify by way of extension, when love is only satisfied by considerable, incalculable effort. The ending of the words is Alm Civi. Sermon 36. For these were the days of Resdania, when Keimer and Dwemer lived under the wise and benevolent rule of the Alm Civi, and their champion, the Hortator, though the Dwemer had become foolish and challenged their masters. Out of their fortresses they came with golden ballista that walked, and mighty Atronox, and things that spat flame, and things that made killing songs. Their king was Dumak Dwarf Orc, but their high priest was Kagranak the Blighter. Under mountains and over them the war with the Dwemer was raged, and then came the Northern men to help Kagranak, and they brought Izmir again. Leading the armies of the Keimer was the slave that would not perish, the Hortator Nerevar, who had traded his axe for the Ethos knife. He slew Dumak at Red Mountain, and saw the Heartbone for the first time. Men of brass destroyed the 11 gates of the Morning Hold, and behind them came the Dwemiri architects of Tone. Iam threw down her cloak, and became the face-snaked queen of the Free and One. Those that looked upon her were overcome by the meanings of the stars. Under the sea, Set stirred and brought the army he had been working on in the castles of glass and coral. Clockwork dregs, mockeries of the Dwemiri war machines, rose up from the seas and took their counterparts back beneath, where they were swallowed forever by the sea. Red Mountain exploded as the Hortator went too far inside, seeking the Sharmat. Dwemiri High Priest Kagranak then revealed that which he had built in the image of Vivec. It was a walking star, which burned the armies of the Triune and destroyed the heartland of Veleth, creating the inner sea. Each of the aspects of the Alm Civi then rose up together, combining as one, and showed the world the sixth path. Iam took from the star its fire, Set took from it its mystery, and Vec took from it its feet, which had been constructed before the gift of Molag Bal, and destroyed in the manner of truth by a great hammering. When the soul of the Dwemer could walk no more, they were removed from this world. Resdania was no more. It had been redeemed of all the iniquities of the foolish. The Alm Civi drew nets from the beginning place, and captured the ash of Red Mountain, which they knew was the blight of the Dwemer, and that would serve only to infect the whole of the middle world, and ate it. Altadun Dan Miri. The beginning of the words is Alm Civi. I give you this as Vivec. Sermon 37. You have discovered the 37th sermon of Vivec, which is a bending of the light, long past the chronicles of the Hortator, who wore inconstant faces and ruled however they would, until Apocalypse. Vivec was born by ribbons of water, which wrote their starward couplings in red. This was a new place of speed. His eyes broke on the spikes above the tower, where the Void Ghost squatted over a drake-scaled drum, imbecile in its rhythm, and he asked of it, "Who are you that need no signature at all?" Free in some, the robes of Iam stretched towards the bright black rim of memory, roping an arc of purchase. This was a new sprinting task, and Set held his swollen belly to its name. Clockmaker's daughter, swimming the dead confession, a longer century of thread, naming her uneaten, a golden cache of Veleth and Velothi. For where else would they know to go? Go here, world without wheel, charting zero deaths and echoes singing. Set said, until all of it was done, and in the center was anything whatever, and the red moment became a great howling unchecked, for the provisional house was in ruin. And Vivec became as glass, a lamp, for the dragon's mane had broke, and the red moon bade him come. The sign of royalty is not this. A signal blue shift, female, told him. There is no right lesson learned alone. He refused the twine on her catching net, spiteful that an uncontinued people would not become fuller by their searching, and yet were racked in their spirits for flight. But the male signals were offended, and Vivec took a fighting form. He undid his eastern light, saying to the Elm Civi that through war they had become brides in glass, which no power could observe. The light bent, and Vivec donned a cuirass made of red plates of jewel, and a mask that marked him born in the lands of man. Wheeling, he spread into an insect salve, worn on the neck of hissed pulps when at challenge. He roared up, and fed his fingers to mammoth ghosts. The signal fires wondered if they mistook this for surrender, for Vivec had told the void that he could learn to undo it all. The light bent, and somewhere a history was finally undone. Of it, Vivec remembered the laughing of the Netchaman of his village when the hunts were good. He marched with his father in the ash, growing strong in the hooks and sail, able to run a junk through silt. At 11, he sung to an ash cairn. He became sick after Red Mountain, with the neck's blood and fever, and was infirm 100 years. His mother survived him, and laid his body at the altar of Padhome. She gave him her skin to wear into the underworld. The light bent, and Vivec awoke and grew fangs, unwilling to make of herself a folding thing. This was a new and lunar promise, and in her biting, she tunneled up and then downward, while her brother and sister smeared across heaven. Thin ruptures of descent, food for scarabs and the worm. She took her people and made them safe, and sat with Azura, drawing her own husband's likeness in the dirt. For I have removed my left hand and my right, he will say, she said, for that is how I shall win against them. Love alone, and you shall know only mistakes of salt. The worldling of the words is Amaranth.